There are folks online. Are any of our board members calling in remotely?
Yes.
I don't see anybody back there. Oh, there we go. Yes, we have somebody online.
Oh, yeah, Phil Cerna, and I just promoted him to panelist.
We can start without a quorum.
No, I think we do. They're nodding, but I can't hear them.
Phil Cerna.
Great, thank you. All right, thank you. We'll start. Yep, so we should have a quorum.
I'd like to call the Lower American River Conservancy meeting in order. Mary Hearn, would you please call the roll?
Supervisor Phil Cerna.
I'm here.
Supervisor Pat Hume.
Here.
Councilmember Roger Dickinson. Councilmember Phil Pluckebaum. Councilmember David Sander. Morgan Kilgore.
Here.
Steve Benson.
Here.
Nanette Lee.
Here.
Stephen Green.
Here.
Corey Brown.
Here.
So technically, we don't have a quorum because Supervisor Cerna is at a location that we didn't previously notice, which we need to do under the Brown Act. So 1, 2, 3, unless I can't count, we need 7.
We have 1, 2, 3, 4,
We
5.
have 6. We need 7.
Yep.
We operate on an informational basis.
Can we just provide informational items and not vote, Colin, hoping somebody shows?
Yeah, you can, you can go through your regular agenda. You just can't take action items at this point.
Yeah, so let's do
Yeah,
that.
we'll need to have a quorum before we get to the two project approvals, which are the 2 action items, which are in agenda item number 5. But we can start with the public comments. And are there any members of the public here that would like to make comments? Seeing none, are there any members of the public online that would like to make public comments? Hearing none,
Got to give the room a little second. Is there anybody online that wants to make a comment for an item not on the agenda?
There are no raised hands.
Thank you so much.
great, thank you. We want to next go to informational items. We have a number of items, active projects, funding summary, quantified parkway investments, and the Proposition 4 and Parkway Priority Survey results. All those are written documents that are linked on the agenda, and very appreciate staff's work on preparing those. Do any board committee members have any questions for Kara Allen, our staff member? Any members online? Seeing no questions, I just wanted to point out a couple things very quickly about the informational items. Under the funding survey, one additional item not reflected in the summary and will be reflected in the summary for February is thanks to the voters in approving Proposition 4 in the legislature and governor. Oops, sorry about that. Sorry, that on do not disturb and it rang anyhow. My apology. In any event, the voters in November approved $10 million for the Lower American River Conservancy as part of the Proposition 4 Bond Act. And the legislature and governor just approved $3 million specifically for the Lower American River Conservancy project. So we'll have those funds available for projects today as well as projects in the future. So we do have a funding to work with, which is always helpful. We're going to skip over for right now our procedural action items, which is agenda item number 5 until we have a quorum. And those are the 2 projects, the Wood Lake and Riverbend Grassland Restoration Project and the American River Rearing Habitat Planning projects. Let's go to informational items until we have a quorum. And I'd like to call on our staff member, Kara Allen, to talk about the Lower American River Conservancy program story map, and really wonderful resource. Thank you, Kara and WCB staff for preparing it.
Yes, so Geneva, if you can pull up or share your screen of our story map. So this is something that we created through ArcGIS Online. It's available to the public. You can find a link to it on our webpage. And this is an interactive map that includes all of our projects that we've funded so far. And the pins on the map are the locations of each project. And when you click on one, on the left side, you'll see some information appear that includes general information about the project, the award date, the grantee, the area plan that's in, the awarded amount, and then the total project cost, and then what type of project it is, the goal or goals that it addresses for the program, and then its current status. So for this one, the Discovery Park picnic shelters and interpretation, it has been closed. But up at the top, there are some pictures that are provided for, before construction conditions. And then Geneva, if you want to scroll to the next picture for Discovery Park. You'll see the constructed one. Yeah, the beautiful concrete constructed picnic shade shelter, and then some of the interpretive signs that were also developed as part of this project. So if you want to advance to the next pictures. And then let's go upstream to one of the other projects. So yeah, Camp Pollock Site Improvement. This is also another project that has been closed out. This is what the site looked like before the project happened. And then that's the ADA trail that was constructed throughout the property and the native plant gardens that have been planted with interpretive signs. So you'll find similar information for each project, and as projects are approved by the Board of WCB for funding, we will be adding them to this story map. And so this will be a nice collection, a portfolio of the projects that we funded under the program.
This is really an excellent resource that really tells the story of the important work that our grantees and the various project proponents are doing with the funding. And the pictures really help tell the story as well as the text. So really recommend that committee members and members of the public take advantage of this wonderful resource that Kara and WCB staff put together. Any questions for Kara?
And you know what? I just want to acknowledge Geneva and Lisa O'Hara at WCB. They had a major role in creating this, and it was wonderful to work with them on it. So just wanted to give thanks to them.
Very good. The Wildlife Conservation Board staff have done a wonderful job on visuals over the last several years. You compare what our agendas and the agendas for WCB in particular compared to 10, 20 years ago. And it's just wonderful, the amount of information and clarity of the information, and the visuals really help. So compliments to Jennifer and Kara and the entire staff.
I will say that we were able to hire a GIS specialist, Lisa O'Hara, and she's been really instrumental in helping us make our maps more visual, more easy to understand, helping us do these story maps. So that was a thank you, legislature and Department of Finance, for letting us hire a GIS person. It's made a big difference. So.
Very good. A lot of money goes into these projects. They're tremendously important projects, and the fact that they're so well documented is very, very helpful.
Real quick. So our IT staff are letting us know that they're trying to make Phil a panelist, but he keeps on declining that. So if he wants to be able to unmute himself and talk, that he needs to accept that invitation to be a panelist.
Phil, did you hear that? They're going to offer you a chance to promote you to panelist, and if you accept, then you can interject whenever you want.
So Kara, so Phil Cerna is on the line.
He is on.
So welcome, Phil. That does give us a quorum.
Well,
No, that's the same
Yeah,
Phil we had
it
before.
doesn't. Under Bagley
He
Keene.
needs, the site he's located in needed to be noticed on our agenda, and since it wasn't, it's not publicly accessible. The rules changed a lot
Okay.
and since COVID, but we can't vote.
So we still don't have,
Yeah.
not having a quorum. We'll go on to the next informational item. One of our regular item for each of our meetings is to hear from our Regional Parks Director, Liz Bellis, with the Parkway update. Liz?
Good morning, making sure you can hear me okay? Are you able
We're
to hear
having
me?
some technical difficulties getting Zoom people to be heard through the room. Can you hear Liz?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna try to hold the mic up to the computer.
My apologies. Are you able to hear me now?
It's really faint.
Okay, also, I had shared a slide over. Would you prefer me to share screen or were you able to get that via email to show on screen?
We can share that.
Here we go.
Thank you so much. I will speak as loudly as possible. Hopefully, you'll be able to hear me. I wanted to share some quick little statistical updates for you. This is a January through July comparison chart on our ranger statistics. And there are a couple of things that I wanted to highlight. Those encampments cleared and the tons of trash and debris removed is actually gone down. And why this is good news is because that means we have fewer encampments within the American River Parkway. So this is actually a good thing, a trend that we would like to see continue. And then the next item is fires. We do have an increase in fires for this calendar year. However, they have remained small. So this is also good news. We haven't had the large fires that we have had in years past. Our drownings also went down and our water rescues went up. I'd like to acknowledge the fact that in the September budget hearings, the County Board of Supervisors gave us additional funding to purchase a Zodiac boat, which will enable our ranger staff to do more water work, our boat patrol work, when the river flows are extremely low. So this will also be a very needed improvement for our operationals. Our calls for service, arrests, and infractions have also gone up. So this is just, again, speaking to the good work of our ranger staff as far as working hard to keep our parks safe and accessible for everyone. We can stop sharing the slide there unless any of the committee members have questions of me on this information. Hearing none, I wanted to talk about one other quick thing that we're working on. We are working with Lionheart and SAC Audubon to prepare a survey for the general public to use in our parks to talk about accessibility of parks. And not just the ADA piece, because we have that written information. However, what would make a park more welcoming and accessible for folks? This is an opportunity for the general public to provide their feedback to us so that we can prioritize areas of improvement within the American River Parkway and our regional park system. Other than that, we are wrapping up what was a very busy season for us. With the final large event will be the Ironman race coming up. And then we'll be happy to take a hopefully what will be a nice winter break to work on some just general improvement projects and gear up again for next year. Any other questions from committee members that I might be able to address?
Do any of the committee members have questions for Liz? Any committee members online have questions for Liz Bellis?
Just
Hearing none, Liz, thank you so much for the updates.
Phil Cerna did drop off from Zoom. I don't know if he's, sprinting over here right now, but he's no longer on Zoom.
Okay, thank you, Kara. Liz, thank you so much for
We
the
did
updates.
fix the audio issue. So everyone on Zoom can be heard now.
Thank you.
Thank
Very
you
good.
so much.
The next item is committee member updates. Do any committee members in the room have any updates? Supervisor Hume?
Not an update, but since we can't hear the item due to a lack of a quorum, I did just want to say we're going to be touring Sailor Bar in order to look at the salmon reds, which apparently in 2019 there were 0, and last year there were over 1,000 observed. So that's a
Very good.
huge improvement and relative to one of the items that we would have considered had we had a quorum.
Excellent, excellent. Well, it's nice to hear progress with salmon, at least at one location.
Yes.
Some locations, and hopefully with our funding, we'll see many more.
Yes.
Thank you for that update. Other updates. Morgan?
Well, to keep on the salmon vein, the Department of Fish and Wildlife will start their escapement surveys on the American River next week. So you'll start seeing some of our crews looking for those salmon reds and the carcasses, so we get a good estimate of how many fish came back to the river this year. So just be on the lookout for those folks and say hi.
Very good. Lots good stuff on one of the California iconic species, our salmon runs. Any other updates?
Just want to share a little on Prop 4 if I could. Just
Please, Jennifer.
Yeah, so I just wanted to provide just sort of a general update on Proposition 4 for WCB. I know we're focused on the 3 million, but I like to make sure I take every public opportunity to share what other resources there are. So the legislature approved roughly $330 million out of Prop 4 for WCB this year. So that's about a third of the Prop 4 allocation in total. It was about 1.02 billion. About 80 million of that is for directed projects that have been identified by the legislature. So those are not available, but the remainder is available to support our programs. So we have about 225, 230. The math is a little murky, but and about half of that will go to restoration, about a half to land acquisition projects throughout the state, of which, 3 million is targeted for the Lower American River. So just for members of the public, we have a lot of really great opportunities to do conservation statewide, and hopefully we'll be sharing those funding opportunities more broadly as time goes on, but want to make sure that people know they're available. And we have a rolling grant application process, so folks can put in a short 2 to 5 page pre-application that gets you in the door and lets you know if it's consistent with our funding opportunities. And then if we think it has a good chance of passing our board, we will ask for a full app. So it's a pretty low barrier to entry. Encourage people to go to wcb.ca.gov and check it out.
Excellent, excellent. One of the things, having been involved in Bond Act campaigns and getting these things on the ballot for the last several decades, wildlife protection is one of the most publicly supported items. And Wildlife Conservation Board, your sound management of these funds have kept public support available for passing these bond acts with significant wildlife habitat and access funding. So really compliments to WCB over the last several decades. I've worked in other states where getting funding like this is difficult because the agencies don't always have the same credibility with the legislature, but WCB has just an immaculate record. So congratulations. Wanted to add one additional update with Mayor McCarty and Council Member Phil Pluckabong's leadership. The City of Sacramento adopted a site plan for the 205-acre Sutter's Landing Park. And the reason I want to mention this is the Lower American River Conservancy Program dedicated about $1.6 million to the acquisition of the Blue Diamond property, which was about 18 acres. That led to SMUD donating the adjoining property, which was about another 12, 13 acres for about 30 acres. The site plan that the city just adopted, City Council unanimously adopted, dedicates 156 of the 204 acres as natural areas. So as an example where funding from the Lower American River Conservancy to acquire 18 acres led to protection of 156 acres at Sutter's Landing Park that will continue to provide opportunities for restoration and habitat protection. Just a good leveraging of WCB, Lower American River Conservancy funding. And just wanted to point that out as something that's very, very helpful in terms of what our funding can do. Wanted to ask the last informational item is announcements. I'm sorry, Carrie, do you want to go over the dates for 2026 Advisory Committee?
Sure. So we do meet the second Thursday in April and October. I think the second Thursday in October next year might have already been booked or there was a conflict. So these are the dates we settled on and we've already reserved the auditorium. So our next meeting will be April 9th and then October 8th, both at 10 a.m. to noon right here and on Zoom.
So Carrie, for public agencies and for nonprofit organizations that would like to have projects that to come before the advisory committee for the April 9th meeting, how many months in advance is it helpful for you to get the pre-application and then the full applications?
For a pre-app, I would say 6 months and then a full app, 3 months.
Very good. Very helpful too for folks to know in advance. Okay, are there any other announcements or other items of interest? Okay, it is 10:23. We do expect one or two more members to be here. So if everybody, if all the advisory committee members are willing to, would like to do is just to temporarily recess the advisory committee until we have another member available. So we have a quorum so we can take up our two action items. There's about $1 million in funding that's at that we want to consider. And if folks can hang in there, we've reserved the room till noon, but hopefully we'll get members within the next few minutes. So if there's willingness, let's recess temporarily and really urge all the members to stick with us until we have a quorum.
Why don't we give it 10 minutes? 10:30, give them time so they can go and take a break.
Yeah, very good idea. Let's recess until 10:35 and everybody can take a break. I think there's a restaurant if anybody needs any coffee, and we'll reconvene at 10:35. Thank you. We're recording. Very good. Barry, can you please recall the roll, please?
Yes. Supervisor Phil Cerna. Supervisor Rich Desmond. Supervisor Pat Hume.
Here.
Councilmember Roger Dickinson.
Here.
Councilmember Phil Pluckabaum. Councilmember David Sander. Morgan Kilgore.
It's Kilgour, and I'm here.
Steve Benson.
Here.
Nanette Lee.
Here.
Stephen Green.
Here.
Corey Brown.
Here.
Cassie Gilson. We have a quorum.
Excellent. We now have a quorum. We've gone through all the items. Wanted to welcome Councilmember Dickinson. And we have one agenda item number 5. We have 2 projects to review. And the order we're going to, in terms of going through these, is we're going to have a staff presentation on the first item, then see if there's any board questions, open up to public comment, both in room and online, have a board discussion about the item, ask for a motion in a second, vote, and then we'll go to the second item. The first item is the Wood Lake and River Bend Grassland Restoration project submitted by the county. Kara Allen?
Okay, thank you, Corey. So yes, our first proposal is for the Wood Lake and River Bend Grassland Restoration Project that was submitted by Sacramento County Department of Regional Parks. The WCB request is $770,500, and the county's cost share is just shy of $150,000, which is about 16% of the total project cost. The county is proposing to restore 30 acres of native grassland and forb habitat in 2 areas of the parkway, including 25 acres in the Wood Lake Plan area and then 5 acres in the River Bend Plan area. Both these sites are located next to future restoration projects that we did fund the planning and design for. And they're also within or adjacent to disadvantaged communities. Next slide, please. So the need for this project is because these sites were farmed in the mid-20th century. They have been fallow for several decades and are now dominated by non-native annual grasses and forbs that increase the parkway's fire risk, reduce the parkway's biodiversity and climate resilience, and compromise the food cover and space that wildlife need to persist in the parkway. There are some scattered patches of desirable trees and shrubs that we want to protect, such as black walnut, a couple different types of oaks and elderberry shrubs, and they will be protected during the restoration activities. Next slide. So the goals of this project are to restore habitat for grassland birds and pollinators, increase the parkway's biodiversity and its native grassland acreage, reduce climate threats, and educate the community about the value of native grasslands. Next slide. So the proposed restoration activities follow the Restoration Manual for Annual Grasslands in California, which is a peer-reviewed publication from the University of California Division of Agriculture and Natural Resources. So after baseline monitoring is completed at both sites, 2 years of site prep will occur to exhaust the non-native seed bank using integrated pest management practices, such as disking, mowing, grazing, and chemical treatments. A grass seed mix made up of 7 species will be drill seeded at the Wood Lake site and then broadcasted at the River Bend site. And then before forbs are seeded, 1 more year of a broadleaf weed control will be done using a broadleaf specific herbicide so that it doesn't harm the grasses that have germinated over the year. And then the forb seed mix includes 14 different species and will be broadcasted along the edges of each site at the end of the 3rd year. And then both sites will have annual monitoring done, and that's to track change and help inform adaptive management, and will include vegetation cover and composition, wildlife use, soil compaction, and there may be an opportunity to partner with Sac State in doing a pollinator monitoring program. And then 2 to 3 interpretive panels will be installed at each site. They will be multilingual and talk about the importance of native grasslands and the wildlife that use them. Next slide. So this project will lead to 25 acres of grassland restored in the Wood Lake area and 5 acres in the River Bend area. The restored habitat will provide better forage and cover for birds and wildlife and more nectar for pollinators throughout the year, and it will improve conditions for wildlife movement through these areas. This project will also help build the parkway's resilience to climate change by reducing flashy fuels and soil compaction and sequestering more carbon underground through the deep root system of native grasses. And finally, this project will advance 3 objectives in the Parkway's Natural Resource Management Plan for converting monocultures of invasive weeds to native plant communities and restoring and naturalizing grasslands in 2 areas of the Parkway. Next slide. So this proposal scored well with an average score of 89 across 4 reviewers. Reviewers thought that this project will have a very significant benefit to the Parkway's habitat values and a modest benefit to educational resources. And then benefits to disadvantaged communities include reducing wildfire risk, providing new learning opportunities, and enhancing wildlife viewing within the parkway. And the county did address reviewer concerns around not using irrigation for this project. However, they did include some contingency measures to ensure successful germination and establishment. And then if this project is recommended for funding, we plan to use our remaining Prop 68 funds, as well as some of our forthcoming Prop 4 funds. And the staff recommendation is to fully fund this project as proposed. And hopefully still online is Casey Sorgan with, she's the senior planner at Regional Parks to help answer any questions.
Great. Do any committee members present have any questions? Stephen?
Just a couple of technical ones, I guess. So I see that 5B is also using Prop 68. Do these two projects pretty much use up the rest of Prop 68?
Well, what we have on the books, so there are some projects that will be closing soon, and we might be recovering some funds from those projects. So we might have a little bit of Prop 68 left after these two projects use what we have available at our November board meeting and February board meeting.
And what's the split between Prop 4 and Prop 68 on this one?
So the Prop 4 funding would be about 400,000 is what we would need from Prop 4 to fully fund this 770,000 request. But the rest would be Prop 68 from what we have, and then what we'll be recovering at our November board meeting, which is about 70,000.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great. Supervisor Hume?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions relative to the two largest line items. The staff report calls out pretty extensive work to be done to eradicate the non-native species through mechanical means and some chemical means or light chemical means and grazing. Is that cost embedded in the site preparation line item?
It is.
Okay, great. And then the second question is for the Forbes seating and maintenance. Can you give me an idea of how much is set aside for maintenance or how long that maintenance fund is anticipated to be available?
So the grant term, the county is requesting through June 30th, 2030. So that would be that's about a 4.5-year grant term. And maintenance period would be the last 1.5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do we feel that's sufficient? And the reason why I ask is because I know that there's the site, and I only know it referred to as the WAPA mitigation site, where apparently there was a reversion back to non-native after the fact, and it hasn't been maintained. And so do we feel like that's a sufficient enough time to make sure that the new plantings take hold?
Yeah, so, the initial site prep is really what's gonna, hit the invasive plants hard.
Okay.
And so the plan is to really exhaust that non-native seed bank that's
Yeah.
in the soil.
Yeah.
Get that to, germinate and control it before the plant sets seed. And so by really controlling or reducing the number of annual grasses and our non-native broadleaf plants, before we actually, seed with natives, that I think is gonna be the strongest approach to really controlling and reducing the amount of maintenance that's needed afterwards. And once we have our perennial grasses come in and the native forbs, they're going to be able to outcompete and, provide a lot of shade, which a lot of these non-native weeds, they come in and take over the exposed areas that have a lot of sun and exposed ground. And so once we fill that area in with our natives, they won't be able to survive as well, the non-natives.
Good. Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Very good. Good question. Other questions? Councilmember Dickinson?
Thanks, Chair. I was just curious, if you mentioned, I missed it and I didn't see it here. When would this restoration occur? Would it be next spring?
Correct. So we still need to, if it's recommended today, then we will still need to bring it to the Board of WCB for final funding approval. And since we are planning on using some Prop 4 funds for this project, we need to wait until our Prop 4 funds are on our books. Hopefully that will be February. And so our current plan is, if it's recommended, that we'll present it to our February board, at our February board meeting, and then they'll be able to get started in the spring of 26.
Good. Okay. If it's appropriate, I would move approval.
Do we want to do ask for public comments first, but we will come back to you in a moment.
Whenever you think the moment is right.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions from board members? Okay, public comments. Any members of the public here have any comments? Any members of the public online?
There are no raised hands.
No raised hands. Thank you. We'll now go to board discussion. Any board members have any comments to make?
I would second the motion that has been put forward.
Okay, we have a motion from Council Member Dickinson, a second from Supervisor Hume. Let's go to a roll call vote.
Supervisor Hume,
Aye.
Councilmember Roger Dickinson.
Aye.
Morgan Kilgour,
Aye.
Steve Benson,
Aye.
Nanette Lee,
Aye.
Corey Brown,
Aye.
Stephen Green.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Congratulations. Just wanted to add one comment since we had the motion on the floor. One of the advantages of this project is to be able to demonstrate that native plants are less prone to fire than the type of invasive weeds we have. So very hopeful this project will further demonstrate that and provide a model of how to reduce the fire risk in our wonderful parkway. So thank you for the county and for the staff for presenting this. The second item is the American River Salmonid Rearing Habitat Planning Project proposed by the city of Sacramento and the Water Forum. Kara?
Yes, so this is our second and final proposal for consideration today. And it was submitted by the Water Forum for the American River Salmonid Rearing Habitat Planning Project. The WCB request is $333,000. Cost share is a whopping $1 million. This is from a Bureau of Reclamation Water Smart grant and also some funds from the Water Forum. And the Water Forum is proposing to complete the planning, design, and environmental review for restoring approximately 30 acres of salmonid rearing habitat at up to 10 sites within the parkway. Next slide. So the need for this project is because, as we know, the Lower American River has been highly modified since the 19th century to support gravel mining, flood management, hydropower, and water supply needs, which have altered the river's hydrology, degraded its channel, and left its floodplains high and dry, which limits the amount of rearing habitat available for juvenile salmonids in their natal river. The Water Forum has restored some rearing habitat in the upper reaches of the parkway near their gravel augmentation sites, but much more rearing habitat is needed to support the wild and hatchery-produced salmon that are coming out of the American River. And rearing habitat allows salmon and steelhead to grow and get fat and strong in the safe waters of the American before they enter the Sacramento River and are faced with many more predators and a long journey through the delta to the ocean. Next slide, please. So the goal of this project is to increase the quantity and quality of rearing habitat in the parkway by developing 10 shovel-ready projects. Next slide. The Water Forum is asking us to fund a small but critical piece of this project, and that is utilization of the EcoFIP toolkit, which is the Ecological Floodplain Inundation Potential Toolkit. EcoFIP uses a robust multi-parameters analysis to quickly and efficiently evaluate sites for their rearing habitat potential. This toolkit has been used across the state with lots of success for the Pajaro, San Joaquin, and Casunas rivers. EcoFIP also has the capability to develop conceptual designs and relative costs. So after identifying 15 to 20 sites, the conceptual designs will be presented to the landowners to prioritize and select 10 sites based on constraints, ecological lift, and cost. And then technical studies and additional stakeholder outreach will occur for the 10 prioritized sites to support the 65% design development and environmental review for both CEQA and NEPA. And then WCB funds will be used for CEQA review and pursuing a SERP, which is the statutory exemption for restoration projects. This streamlined CEQA process is done through the Department of Fish and Wildlife's Cutting the Green Tape Unit, who will also help the Water Forum develop a programmatic permitting strategy for these sites. Next slide. So the outcomes of this project will include 10 shovel-ready projects that provide quality rearing habitat, reactivate approximately 30 acres of floodplain, and restore ecosystem functions and important riverine habitat. This work will also increase the pace and scale of restoration in the parkway, and it evaluates the management action in the parkway's natural resource management plan for lowering the floodplain in several areas of the parkway. Next slide. So this proposal scored really well with an average score of 90 across 4 reviewers. Reviewers believe this will provide a very significant benefit to the parkway's habitat resources and a meaningful benefit for the parkway's water quality. And then once constructed, the design projects will benefit disadvantaged communities by reducing heat effects through restored shaded riverine aquatic habitat and improving water quality that flows through the parkway. And then the Water Forum did address reviewer concerns related to tribal engagement and water temperature being part of the habitat suitability analysis. And then if recommended for funding, we plan on using our remaining Prop 68 funds for this project. And then staff recommendation is to fully fund this project as proposed. And with us in the audience is Erica Bishop, a program manager at the Water Forum, if there are any questions.
Any questions from any committee members? Councilman Dickinson?
Thanks. This looks like to me a great project, but it's to get to the point of having shovel-ready next steps. And so the obvious question, it seems to me, is what are the prospects for having the funding to do the actual work of implementing what's going to occur under this grant? I'd hate to see us spend the money, notwithstanding how great it is, if it doesn't turn to fruition, particularly with respect to spawning and sustaining the fish we're talking about. So is there a prospect out there for another source of money for implementation?
Well, the Water Forum can come back to WCB for implementation dollars for some of the sites. But then I think the Water Forum does have some of their own, general fund money that they can use. And there's also, a great partnership with some federal agencies in doing work in the parkway. But Erica, if you know of other potential sources, if you want to approach the podium.
Yeah.
If you want to.
Thank you all for hearing and considering the proposal. And happy to be here today. That's a really good question. That's something that we are always thinking about in our habitat and science planning, in that we don't want to have stranded designs. That's the last thing that we want. So I would, to answer your question, I would point to our existing program work where we have, many of you I think have been to or have heard about our we call them our gravel sites. So areas upstream of River Bend where we have spawning and rearing sites that are together. And that is an example of how we address this problem, is that when we have planning and planning funds, we are able to advance analysis and designs and get things to that shovel-ready stage. And our existing sites, there are 10, and 6 of them have been constructed at. And we have designs sitting here waiting for when implementation funds come up, we're ready to go. And that's very attractive to regulators and funders. And when we plan the projects, we don't do them piecemeal. We're conducting the analysis and the design, the regulatory coverage, and our stakeholder engagement at a programmatic level, so that there are fewer hurdles when construction funds become available. We're not starting over from scratch. So we're basically ready to go. And that's the approach that we would take here. with that, the CEQA funding request. And then once we move into implementation, depending on which agency you are receiving implementation funds from, some of them consider permitting and construction all together, and some of them are separate. So we do have one of the cost shares that's the cost share that's detailed there, Kara mentioned, is $1 million. That includes $650,000 of grant funds from Reclamation's Water Smart program and $350,000 of water forum cost share. The Water Smart grant is what they call Part A. Part B of the Water Smart grant program that we would be eligible for after completion of this is for implementation and construction. So it's definitely seen as attractive to that funding agency when we have worked with them on the planning aspect to then move into implementation. And we have a great partnership with Reclamation from other funding streams such as CVPIA, and have had, as you have seen, a regular cadence of construction because we were ready to move forward really at, within about a 12-month timeframe, which is pretty fast for construction to go from understanding that you have funding available to really getting in the river and doing the work. So I think right now there are definitely Water Smart and CVPIA funds available. We also had a recent partnership. Several projects constructed in the last year were with other Prop 68 funds. So we do know that there are opportunities, always upcoming with the state for construction funds, especially as part of the Healthy Rivers and Landscapes program. There are funds there. There are also construction funds available from NIMS and other agencies. So I would say that we're always on the lookout for not just having stranded designs and making sure that we have money in the bank so that we can, strike while the iron's hot. So I don't know if you have a follow-up to that, but
Well, I
definitely have an eye on the next phase.
Yeah,
of
I appreciate
what
the
would be available.
elaboration. And then is it fair to say that assuming this grant is approved and you receive the money for this stage, you'll begin immediately talking to the decision makers for Water Smart and the other sources you referred to for, we've got this shovel-ready project that's underway, and now we need the funding to implement. Is that a fair assumption for us to make?
Yes, it is a fair assumption. There was, with the current federal situation, there was some delay. The Water Smart application was submitted about 18 months ago, and we received our notice of award last month. So we're excited to get moving, but there was some time in between. But we, once we are able to get contracted and we're now starting in earnest with that work, we can go ahead and look ahead knowing what our outcome is going to be from this phase and start applying for that implementation and construction money but before we reach the end of this process. So there doesn't need to be a delay.
Yeah, I think that's important because I assume there'll be some
We gotta-
process that you have to go through that's going to be time consuming in that regard. And just, you don't want to get to the shovel ready stage and then have it deteriorate or erode, maybe figuratively and literally, before you can get implementation funding.
Yeah,
But-
we definitely want to make sure that we don't have too much time in between because we have very good data for the American River to inform this process that we want to use in our analysis. And as the time goes on, the river changes. So we really want to keep it moving and get in the river for construction and implementation and our monitoring as soon as possible. And just to add to that, we have very good relationships with our partners at Reclamation, and we're very in step with what their expectations are as far as when notice of funding awards may be coming out, what their, kind of internal budget and fiscal year cycles look like and what the expectations can be. So we do really try to stay on top of things and make sure and apply for funds as soon as the solicitation is on the street.
Well, thank you for the additional information. I don't know the extent to which the WCB staff monitors the follow-on from grants that are made, but it seems to me it makes sense to have the staff check in and see how implementation funding is coming along once, assuming this grant is made and the work is begun. So I appreciate it. Thanks.
Great, very good question. For Proposition 4, we have $10 million that will be available to us as the Lower American River Conservancy. So there's additional funding for this and other projects. She also mentioned that thanks to the work of our staff in the packet, there's a chart of all the different projects that are now being implemented and a percentage, shows what percentage of the projects are either a planning project or an implementation project. And so the question, Councilman, that you asked about tracking is a very important question. And I think our staff is very much on top of it. So thanks for emphasizing the need to make sure that we're following through on these projects. Let's move to, seeing no more questions, let's move to public comment. Oh, I'm so sorry, Morgan. And then Steven.
Thanks. I'm really excited to see this project. I think all of these spawning and gravel habitats definitely help salmon. I was a little concerned though that temperature was not one of the metrics that was included in the EcoFIP. The American River has been identified in the past few years as a temperature impaired water body. I understand the response was that most of the fall run Chinook will have outmigrated usually by April or May. But we do still have steelhead in the river. And so since this is providing rearing habitat for salmon, steelhead, and lamprey, I would like to understand why there isn't an inclusion in temperature into the site selection, because fish may not move if they find a happy spot. And then we want to make sure that those sites that are selected are going to be optimal for those steelhead that might want to stay in them also. So can you provide me some was temperature a metric that is going to be included, or is it still not going to be an included metric for the EcoFIP modeling?
So as mentioned, the EcoFIP toolkit is something that we work with one of our consultants on, but the basic premise of it is very similar to how we conduct our existing habitat design and suitability analysis. That's a really good question about temperature. We know, yes, temperature is, the American River is temperature impaired. Usually, as you mentioned, during that fall spawning period, we do see that it is sometimes during critically dry years impaired. And I think of like summer of 2021, right? Where it was just the river was very low and it was full of algae. So usually we are okay or more appropriate for temperatures during the rearing period, which is what we would be focused on. As you mentioned, the fall run Chinook have for the most part, completely exited the river by the time we get to May. And we do also, part of what Water Forum works on is not only physical habitat planning and construction, but we do have a flow management standard. And we work with reclamation on implementing that. The flow management standard is a lot of complex calculations, but one of the provisions in that flow management standard is that there is, we're working with reclamation, providing temperature modeling and helping to inform their operations to decide whether or not maybe a power bypass needs to happen, and really how the limited cold water pool in Folsom Dam can be most utilized to help serve the fish, not only during the fall period, but also that oversummering steelhead time period. So that's something we're paying attention to, but that is something where Water Forum likes to provide data to our decision makers and operators, but we don't turn the knob. We do see, to your question though, the capacity limitations, where our fall run are much more abundant in the river than our steelhead. You know, we do wish we had more steelhead, but there just aren't too many of them there. And even fewer of them are over summering during that, you know, really now, right, our warmest time of the year when the river might be lowest. And a lot of the habitat that we're looking at are floodplain grading and reconnecting floodplains to the river, but also perennial side channel areas. So those are areas like that don't seasonally change as much, where they are always wet. And that is where we observe many of our steelhead oversummering. So that is a main component. There is a lot of focus on floodplain restoration in general, but we do know in the American River and streams like this, where you may not have those large floodplains available or the water to inundate them, those side channels that never dry out and have deeper, cooler spots for that refugia during those critical times of year, or when we might have like a steelhead oversummering. So I would say that is something we would take into account, is that we are not only floodplain focused and we do construct a lot of side channels, but that the temperature is definitely an issue, and it's something that Water Forum continues to work with our partners on. So it's not maybe something that we can entirely solve, but definitely want to keep considering. And as far as really site specific, you would never want to just grade a floodplain or construct a side channel and not make sure that you have plantings. You want to make sure that you have overhanging vegetation that's planted, and anything you can do to help shade that area and provide even every degree matters for a fish. So they're very sensitive to temperature. So that's something that's incorporated into the project designs to try to help get them over the hump. Just every little degree counts to improve conditions.
I totally agree. I just think that for the habitat suitability for the sites you're selecting, including temperature as a potential limiting factor for steelhead over summer would be a very critical component.
Yes, it is considered in the analysis, and we have a lot of very good information about fish presence on the river and where they are likely to be and where it makes sense. But I would say that was not necessarily a layer in the EcoFIP toolkit, but it is part of our broader analysis that we're looking at. Like, we wouldn't want to construct something that would just be a big, dry, sunny floodplain. So it's.
Morgan, any other questions? Stephen?
Just one quickly, I don't, maybe not a very fair question. I know you just got the letter of award from Bureau of Reclamation, but just with everything going on at the federal level, how secure are you feeling that that award is, I guess, at this point?
We are feeling very secure in that award. For one reason, it is it's a small amount compared to what a lot of the awards are that Reclamation is making. And that award was that the evaluation of those proposals were delayed for quite some time, but that did start well before the election and all of the recent changes that we've had. So there's potentially, other delays that caused that. But we did have the reclamation staff we were working with, the grant administrators, were actually very proactive in making sure, like, hey, this has come down. It made it through all of the additional evaluations that are being required for federal funding at this time that we've all, heard about in the news, and that it passed the test. And so let's get this executed. So that was really heartening to me to know that they were in a hurry. So we aren't foreseeing any issues. And we did, during the most recent, when it was a potential for the government shutdown, we did receive a letter from our administrator saying, there is no reason for you to stop work on this grant. Your award is not in danger. Please keep doing what you're doing. But if you apply for reimbursement due to furloughs, there could be a delay on that, but not that the award was being rescinded or anything like that. So it made me feel better.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions by advisory committee members? Seeing none, let's go to public comments. Any members of the public or member of the public that wants to make a comment on this project? Seeing none, anybody online?
There are no raised hands.
No raised hands. Board discussion? Any comments, discussion from board members? Seeing none, be entertaining a motion. Moved by Councilman Dickinson, seconded by Mr. Green. Let's call the roll, please.
Supervisor Pat Hume,
Aye.
Councilmember Roger Dickinson.
Aye.
Morgan Kilgour,
Aye.
Steve Benson,
Aye.
Nanette Lee,
Aye.
Stephen Green,
Aye.
Corey Brown.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Very good. Thank you, Mary. Thanks, Kara, for all the presentations. Before we adjourn, just want to ask committee members, if anybody else has any additional announcements or information? Seeing none, we can adjourn 45 minutes early. You'll get a motion for adjournment. Moved by Councilman Dickinson. Second, no objections, so we're adjourned. Roger, thank you.